Welcome back to the deep dive. If you just stop and think about the human body for a second, it's
hmm
it's basically a fortress that is constantly under siege.
It really is.
You're fighting off environmental threats, internal threats, viruses, bacteria, and all the while, just dealing with the mundane wear and tear of daily life.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that whole survival game requires an incredible uh, security and maintenance system. And that's exactly what we're dissecting today.
We are taking a complete systematic shortcut through the architecture of human defense, the lymphatic system.
Yep.
Our mission today is pretty simple. We want to transform the dense text of Chapter 23 into actionable, well-structured knowledge. We're focusing on the anatomy, the plumbing, and the critical physiological roles this system plays. You should walk away feeling like you've really mastered the chapter.
Right. And to set the stage, let's just look at the basic components. You essentially have three parts. There's the fluid itself, which is called lymph. Then you have the pipes that carry it, the lymphatic vessels, and then the specialized lymphoid tissues and organs that are constantly monitoring, adjusting, and, housing the defensive cells.
So it's a filtration, defense, and fluid balance machine all rolled into one.
Exactly. And when you look at his core roles, they cover everything from cellular defense to hydraulics, really.
Let's start with those big three functions then.
Okay, so the first, and maybe the most obvious function, is the production, maintenance, and distribution of lymphocytes.
The soldiers of the immune system.
The elite customized cells, yeah. And we group the structures that house them into two types. First, you have primary lymphoid structures like the bone marrow and the thymus. Think of these as the training academies.
Right, where the cells mature?
It's where stem cells divide and mature into fully capable defenders.
So training and maturation happen there. What's the second type?
Those are the secondary lymphoid structures. Think of these as the deployment zones, the battle stations. Places like the lymph nodes, the tonsils, the spleen. This is where the mature lymphocytes gather. They encounter an antigen, and they initiate the actual immune response.
That distinction, training versus deployment, that makes perfect sense for understanding their life cycle. What about the fluid role? That's function 2.
Function 2 is, and this is no exaggeration, it's absolutely critical for life. It's maintaining normal blood volume and preventing radical local variations in interstitial fluid composition.
Okay, break that down for us.
Now, here's the number that should really stick with you. Roughly 3.6 liters of fluid. That's mostly water and solutes. It just oozes out of our blood plasma and into the interstitial space every single day.
Wait, hold on. 3.6 liters.
Liters every day.
That's the vast majority of our blood volume. If that fluid just stays in the tissues, we'd be in major trouble.
Exactly. You'd be in fatal trouble quickly. The lymphatic system has to recapture and return that exact volume back to the venous circulation every 24 hours. And if that drainage is compromised, or if a major collecting vessel breaks, the rapid and profound drop in blood volume can be fatal. It really highlights that the lymphatic system is just as much a plumbing maintenance crew as it is a security force.
And then finally, function 3, the utility role.
Yeah, it's a very practical one. The system provides an alternative transport route for hormones, nutrients, and waste products.
What's a good example of that?
The classic example is dietary lipids. Certain large lipid compounds that you absorb from your food, they actually can't cross regular capillary walls.
Okay.
So instead, specialized lymphatic capillaries called lacteals absorb them, package them into the lymph, and then transport them directly to the bloodstream. It's a clever bypass.
Okay, so let's talk about that plumbing itself. How does this fluid, this lymph, actually move from the tissues all the way back toward the heart? We have to start at the smallest level, right?
Right.
The capillaries.
Right, and we need to visualize how this microscopic plumbing differs from our regular blood vessels. Lymphatic capillaries aren't part of a circuit. They're blind-ended tubes that just start out in the peripheral tissues.
So they're not connected at both ends.
Nope. They have 5 key differences from vascular capillaries, but the most important one really comes down to permeability.
Lay it out for us. What makes them so unique?
They are significantly more permeable. Unlike the tightly sealed vascular capillaries, lymphatic ones have these overlapping endothelial cells.
Okay.
And these overlaps create a structure that functions like a tiny little one-way valve. When interstitial fluid pressure increases outside the capillary, it pushes those cells open like a trap door. Fluid flows in.
But not out.
But not out, because when the pressure increases inside the vessel, the cells flatten, and they seal that door shut.
So it's basically a vacuum system. It's designed only to absorb.
Precisely. And because these junctions are so large, they don't just absorb clean fluid. They vacuum up large items that regular capillaries just can't handle. Cellular debris, dead cells, large proteins, and unfortunately, viruses and bacteria.
So the lymph that's collected there becomes a kind of health monitor. It's holding all the evidence of what's happening in that specific tissue.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so once that debris-laden fluid is inside, it flows into larger vessels. How do they compare to, say, veins?
They strongly resemble medium-sized veins, but they have thinner walls and wider lumens. But crucially, because the internal pressure is minimal, they have to rely very heavily on a network of internal valves.
To prevent backflow.
Right. And these valves are packed so tightly together, they give the vessels this characteristic beaded appearance. It ensures the lymph only moves forward toward the major trunks.
And if that system fails, if the valves or vessels are damaged?
That's when you get lymphedema. If that lymph drainage slows down or just stops because of a blockage, say from surgery or radiation or an infection, the interstitial fluid just keeps accumulating.
And the tissue swells.
Painfully. The tissues become distended and chronically swollen. It's a very stark visual reminder of that 3.6 liters we were just talking about.
Right. Let's track that fluid further then. These peripheral vessels, they converge into larger regional vessels. We don't need to list every single one of the 5 lymphatic trunks, but conceptually, what are they doing?
They're just the major collecting points. They aggregate the flow from the superficial lymphatics, which run close to the skin, and the deep lymphatics, which run with the deep arteries and veins. All this collected lymph has to funnel into one of 2 final destinations before it gets back to the blood.
And that's where we have the main highway, the thoracic duct, and then the sort of secondary road, the right lymphatic duct.
That's it. The thoracic duct is the major channel. It collects lymph from the entire body inferior to the diaphragm.
Okay, so everything from the waist down.
Everything. And it actually starts down low, often at this expanded chamber called the cisterna chyli. Then it also handles the entire left side of the body superior to the diaphragm. It ultimately empties into the left subclavian vein.
So just to be clear, the thoracic duct is handling something like 3/4 of the body's total lymph return.
That's about right, yeah. And the right lymphatic duct handles that remaining quarter. So the right side of the head, the neck, and the upper thorax. Everything's superior to the diaphragm on the right. It empties into the right subclavian vein.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We move from the pipes to the cells that use the pipes, the lymphocytes. They're the primary cells of this system, and they come in 3 major classes. Let's think of the immune response as a specialized military force.
That's a great analogy. The largest group, making up about 80% of circulating lymphocytes, are the T cells, or thymus-dependent cells. We can think of them as the infantry and the command structure.
Okay, so what are their specialized roles within that infantry?
First, you have the direct attackers, the cytotoxic T cells. They are responsible for cell-mediated immunity because they physically seek out and destroy foreign cells, infected cells, cancerous cells. It's direct, hand-to-hand combat.
And the command structure?
That would be the regulatory T cells. So the helper T cells and the suppressor T cells. They don't fight directly, but they are the crucial coordinators. They regulate the entire response.
Activating other cells, telling them when to stop?
Exactly. Activating B cells, amplifying the cytotoxic attack, and eventually suppressing the immune response once the threat is neutralized. Then you have the memory T cells, which are like the veterans. They stand by for decades, ready to launch an immediate massive response if that same antigen ever shows up again.
Okay, so if T cells are the infantry, then B cells have to be the artillery.
Precisely. B cells, or bone marrow-derived cells, they account for about 10 to 15%. When they get stimulated, they transform into plasmacytes.
And plasmacytes are weapons factories.
That's a perfect description. They produce and secrete massive amounts of antibodies, which are specialized proteins, or immunoglobulins, that bind to the enemy antigen. Since these antibodies travel in the fluids of the body, we say B cells are responsible for antibody-mediated immunity, or humoral immunity. They're fighting at a distance.
And that leaves the last 5 to 10%, the NK cells, natural killers.
They are the constant, immediate police patrol. NK cells don't wait for activation or coordination. They just patrol peripheral tissues, detecting and immediately destroying abnormal cells. Foreign, infected, or cancerous right on site.
Wow.
This proactive, continuous inspection is what we call immunological surveillance.
And for this whole sophisticated defense to launch, the cells have to be activated. This leads to the mechanism of antigen presentation.
Yes. For the customized response to work, the T cells need to know what they're fighting. So often, a large cell like a macrophage will engulf a piece of the invader, the antigen, and then it displays pieces of it on its own membrane.
It's like holding up a wanted poster.
It is. This antigen presentation allows a specific T cell to recognize the threat. That T cell has to possess immunocompetence, meaning it's already capable of recognizing that specific antigen. And once it recognizes it, it rapidly divides through lymphopoiesis to create an army big enough to win.
And we see the immense vulnerability of the system when that essential T cell function is destroyed.
That is the tragic clinical lesson of AIDS. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome is caused by a virus that selectively attacks and destroys helper T cells.
It takes out the command structure.
It takes out the central command, and the entire immune system just collapses, leaving the individual vulnerable to infections and cancers that a healthy immune system would easily neutralize.
So these cells are circulating, but they need organized meeting points, processing centers. Let's talk about where they gather to fight in these specialized tissues and organs. We'll start with lymphoid tissues.
Okay, so lymphoid tissues are these dense groupings of lymphocytes, known as lymphoid nodules. Critically, they lack a fibrous connective tissue capsule separating them from the surrounding tissue. They often have a pale center, the germinal center, and that's where activated lymphocytes are just rapidly dividing.
And the largest, most famous examples of these nodules are the MALT.
MALT, yeah, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. They are strategically located wherever we have openings to the outside world. The most familiar examples are the tonsils, the pharyngeal or adenoids, the palatine, and the lingual tonsils. They form a protective ring right around the entrance to the pharynx.
And we often hear about the clinical notes for these frontline defenses.
Yes, because they're constantly exposed, they can get overwhelmed. Tonsillitis is the classic example. Infection leads to painful swelling, sometimes so severe it can even compromise breathing.
Right.
And we also have the aggregated nodules known as Peyer's patches in the small intestine and the fused nodules of the appendix. When the appendix becomes inflamed appendicitis, there's a grave risk of perforation, which can lead to life-threatening peritonitis.
Okay, now we move to the lymphoid organs, the big guns. Unlike nodules, these are separated from surrounding tissue by a fibrous connective tissue capsule. Let's start with the lymph nodes.
Lymph nodes are these small, kidney bean-shaped filters. They are the most important filters in the entire system. Lymph flows in through several afferent vessels. It percolates slowly through internal sinuses, and then it leaves through a single efferent vessel at the hilum.
That whole structure is designed for maximum efficiency, isn't it?
Absolutely. As the lymph slows down, it passes through specialized areas where macrophages engulf debris and T and B cells are waiting to screen for antigens. The source notes that a lymph node removes at least 99% of the antigens present in the arriving lymph.
99%.
99. That level of efficiency is astonishing. It's similar to the filtration rate of the kidney, but it's designed for defense, not just waste removal.
That makes the location of the largest nodes in the armpits, the neck, the groin make perfect sense. They're monitoring lymph coming from the most likely sites of injury.
Exactly. And this filtration capacity is why analyzing them is so clinically vital. When a node becomes chronically or excessively enlarged, we call it lymphadenopathy. And this matters so much in oncology because cancer cells often use the lymphatic vessels as a highway to spread, to metastasize.
So the node becomes a record.
The node is essentially a record of whether the fight has already spread.
Yeah.
Analyzing the nodes near a tumor determines the cancer stage and dictates the treatment.
Okay, next let's discuss the thymus, the essential training center for T cells.
The thymus, located up in the superior mediastinum, is unique because it establishes the blood-thymus barrier.
Right.
And this barrier is absolutely critical because it prevents T cells, while they're still maturing and learning to tell friend from foe, from being exposed to antigens circulating in the blood.
If they were exposed too early, they might start attacking the body itself.
They could, yeah.
Yeah.
And we also note that the thymus undergoes involution. It shrinks dramatically after puberty, which is a major factor in our later decline in immune function.
And finally, the largest single lymphoid organ, the spleen.
The spleen is essentially the lymph node equivalent for the blood. It filters the blood for abnormal components, removing old or damaged red blood cells and initiating immune responses to antigens it finds in circulation. It's located on the left side, kind of tucked between the stomach and the kidney.
And histologically, it's often divided into two zones, right?
Yes, the two zones reflect its dual function. You have the red pulp, which is dominated by red blood cells and macrophages. This is the area filtering blood and recycling iron. And then you have the white pulp, which is composed of lymphoid nodules, similar to what's in the nodes, where T and B cells congregate and initiate the immune response when bloodborne antigens are detected.
Before we wrap up with aging, let's touch on one final and frankly terrifying clinical reality: lymphomas.
Lymphomas are malignant tumors, cancers, that originate from cancerous lymphocytes or their stem cells.
Yeah.
They are serious malignancies, including Hodgkin's disease and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And the first symptom is often easy to miss.
It is, because it's typically painless. It's just an enlargement of the lymph nodes. This, again, just reinforces how important it is to use the nodes as indicators of systemic health.
That brings us to the final section, 23.7, where we face the reality that this magnificent system declines over time. What happens to our immunity as we age?
The process is called immunosenescence. Several changes occur. T cells become significantly less responsive to antigens, which means fewer cytotoxic T cells are deployed during an infection. B cells also become less responsive, leading to lower, slower antibody production.
So the whole system just gets sluggish.
It does. The result is a general decline in immunological surveillance. We are simply more susceptible to serious viral, bacterial, and crucially, cancer threats.
It's a natural consequence, but one with immediate clinical implications.
Absolutely. The need for aggressive protective measures, like strong recommendations for annual flu shots and other vaccinations in the elderly, is a direct result of this measurable biological decline.
It brings us full circle, really. We've traced the system from those blind-ended capillaries collecting that critical 3.6 liters of fluid through the massive collecting ducts and into the organized, heavily defended structures of the nodes, spleen, and thymus. The three core functions: defense, fluid balance, transport, they're all interconnected and essential.
And if we look into the cutting-edge research, considering that natural decline through thymic involution, there's a massive focus in hot topic research on trying to reverse this. Scientists are actively investigating ways to rejuvenate the thymus in the elderly to boost T-cell diversity and potentially prolong a healthy, cancer-free lifespan.
Oh.
Which raises a pretty provocative question for you to consider. If the quality of our health is defined by our immune surveillance, can we eventually control the aging process by simply keeping our lymphatics and our T-cells young?
That's a fascinating thought, blurring the line between biology and radical life extension. Thank you for joining us as we went deep on the lymphatic system, the body's central defense line and its maintenance crew. We hope this deep dive provided the complete shortcut you needed.